Drinking buddies, what are the top 5 alternatives to Weller and Pappy Van Winkle? And why is Matt Porter from ADHD Whiskey completely wrong about this? Let's go.
I'm your drinking buddy.
All right, drinking buddies, before we get started, I would like to ask, if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. And if you are a subscriber, make sure you hit the like button because it really helps the channel out a lot by telling the algorithm that you liked the video. Anyway, let's just get right down to brass tacks. So I was putting together this list of 5 alternatives to Van Winkle, and I mentioned in the, we'll go ahead and start with number 1. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So number 1 is going to be this WB Saffel. I think this is a great alternative to Pappy Van Winkle and Weller, even though it's not a weeder. And I mentioned this in my Discord chat, and one of my good friends, Zach, mentioned that Matt Porter recently did a video talking about how the best alternatives for Van Winkle and Weller is other Buffalo Trace products because they have that same flavor profile regardless of whether they have wheat in them or not. And I do agree with that sentiment that if you're suggesting a suggestion for something, it doesn't have to have a similar recipe. I agree with him there 100%. But the entire point of the reason we need alternatives to Weller and Van Winkle is because they're too hard to find. Saying, hey, you can't find Weller, just buy Rock Hill Farms instead, helps no one. That helps nobody, Matt. Come on, dude. Do better. Anyway, I do love you, Matt Porter. If you somehow are watching this, I do love you. You're great. You're very entertaining. But I completely disagree with you on this. You can't suggest Rock Hill Farms and, E.H. Taylor and all of these things for alternatives for a whiskey because those are just as hard to find as Weller. So, sorry, those don't work. So my list is going to concentrate around whiskeys that are going to give you a similar flavor profile to what you get out of Weller and Van Winkle while being more obtainable. So we have WB Saffel here for our first one. It is not a weeder, but it's 107 proof. Does kind of taste like old Rip 10 or this Weller 107 here. I think this is a great alternative to those two. And if you can't find this one in your area, I would say this is a decent second choice. So if you can't find the WB Saffel, go with the Russell's Reserve Single Barrel. This is a store pick from Total Wine, but you can get those pretty readily available. I wouldn't say they're easy to find, but they are not unicorns. They're not hard to find. If you look hard enough, you'll find one. Well, I guess I'll leave that up here. So number 1 is WB Saffel. But we are going to move to a weeder now because I think that there are a few great weeders out there in the market that are good alternatives to this line. And I'm going to start with the Maker's Mark product, and I'm going to say specifically the wood finishing series, now preferably one that has American oak as the stave details. So the stave details on this one is BEP from last year, 10 virgin toasted American oak staves. So what do those do to this whiskey? Well, they age it up a little bit. They give it a little more oak extraction, make it taste a little older. So you're going to get a little bit more of an older experience out of this than you would out of a standard Maker's Mark product. The standard Maker's Mark product, I think, is a little bit too young to be a great recommendation for an alternative to Van Winkle just because it's young. But I will say that if you can't find this one and you want an alternative to Weller Full Proof, Maker's Cask Strength is an excellent alternative to Weller Full Proof. I dare say I think I like it even better. But ideally, you can get one of the wood finishing series. There is a new bottle coming out this year. These are probably long gone, but there is a new one coming out soon. And I probably had 15 to 20 opportunities to buy this, probably more. I probably had about 30 opportunities to buy this bottle last year. It was everywhere. So if you do a little hunting, you should be able to find that. And hey, let's be honest here. Good whiskey is not easy to find. It can be difficult. Are there great shelf bottles? Sure. But, when we're trying to replace something that, sells for, $900, you got to find something pretty special to replace it. And that's why I'm going to go for one that I think doesn't quite line up in the flavor profile because this is a high rye, so you're going to get a little bit more of that rye spice. But you got to have something with a little age on it, and there's not a lot of great high age whiskeys on the shelves that just sit on shelves. So I'm going to say a Calumet 15 or a Calumet 16 is a great alternative to Pappy 15 or Old Rip 10 because it's going to be a similar proof point, it's a similar age, and it does have those nice medicinal cherry, candy cherry things that you get off of Buffalo Trace. just in a package that is also going to give you a little bit of rye spice. So not quite going to hit that flavor profile, but definitely a great recommendation. Now, I am going to go to another weeder, but once again, Matt was very adamant that weeders don't match up with the flavor profile of Weller. I disagree with that statement, but I do agree with some of his examples. Like he mentioned that Larceny, Barrel Proofs, Old Fitzgerald, Rebel, those types of products that are coming out of Heaven Hill or Lux Row, they don't. They definitely don't. I'm not going to recommend one of those bottles as an alternative to Weller or Van Winkle because they taste closer to Jim Beam in flavor profile than they do to Weller or Van Winkle. They're very nutty and they just don't work. Those don't work as alternatives to Van Winkle or Weller. Now, if you take that Larceny flavor profile and mix it with the maker's profile, for some reason you end up with something that tastes like Weller or Van Winkle. So I think we'd be remiss to not talk about Prudent Pappy. Now, this is a bottle that only exists because of how hard these bottles are to find. What is Prudent Pappy? You take maker's cask strength at 2 parts to 1 part Larceny small batch. 2 bottles you can get at, those are both available at the Walmart by me. They're readily available on almost every whiskey shelf. And you take those, mix them, let them sit in a bottle for a couple weeks, throw in a barrel aging spiral, link in the description if you want to get a little more age out of it. But yeah, this one sits at 103.8 proof. You just do a little math on your calculator on your phone. And I made this little label for it. And yeah, Prudent Pappy. I think that is a great recommendation for something to replace Pappy Van Winkle or Weller. And then I do have one more weeder on here that I think does scratch some of that itch, and that is going to be the Bardstown Origin Series, the bottled and bond at 100 proof. I know there's no 100 proof Weller, but there is some in the 90s. There's some in the at 107. There's one at 114. So it's kind of in between those, and you are going to get some of the same flavor profiles on there because it is softer. Weeders are softer. You don't get that rye spice thing off of them. They do sometimes have the flavor profile that you get off of these guys. But anyway, I'm just a whiskey tuber dude with a lot smaller following than ADHD whiskey. So what do I know? Tell me how wrong I am in the comments. And, if you are, a Patreon or something for Matt Porter at ADHD Whiskey, throw this at him somehow. Send him an email or send him in your Discord, whatever it is, that I made this video. I'm very curious to what he thinks, because I am a fan. So anyway, drinking buddies, I really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for watching. These are my 5 recommendations for alternatives for Van Winkle and Weller. Matt Porter, you're wrong. Cheers, buddies. See you on the next one.